Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy Does It, a podcast created specifically for the amazing members of the MJ team. Rob and I are excited to be back with you for another great episode. Our topic today, we lured people in with this title, The Quiet Power. And it is a quiet power. It's the quiet power of listening. And what I have found is that listening is more important than speaking.
100%.
What? That's crazy. Anyway, we're going to get into all of that soon. What would you rather do you have for me this week, Rob?
Would you rather? All right, here we go. So would you rather get a redo button or a perfect comeback button that will deliver a devastating line in any conversation? Which one would you choose?
I think I would choose. I've never been good in these types of situations.
What, the comeback?
Yeah. I'm not good. Like, are we talking about in just a regular conversation or like a heated conversation or
Whatever.
what? I'm not good at any of that. Like when emotions are high,
Yeah.
I don't really have good thing. I don't have good word. I can think of it later. So the redo button is the redo button, I think, is something I feel like I've wished that I would have, because I feel like I can think later what I should have said in that moment that would have been funny or witty or even just a good comeback. So I think I'm going to go with the redo button.
What? Are you kidding me? You said that you don't have the perfect comeback.
You know, I like to think about stuff for a little
This
while.
gives you the button. You hit the button and it fixes it for you.
This is like the easy button?
Yes. Hit the button.
Okay, that feels a little too spur of the moment for me, though.
I'm hitting the button for you. Yo, can you imagine sitting there and somebody says something snarky or whatever? You know, people walk up to your desk all the time and they say something to you and you're like, somebody says something, you're like, oh, I should have said that. Or they said that if you, you think about like what your comeback is going to be after people walked away, then it means a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's like, oh, I should say next time they come up, this is what I'm going to say. Well, of course they come back up and they don't say anything like that.
Yeah.
So your comeback's gone. So now this is your perfect
Okay, all
comeback
right,
button.
maybe I see what you're saying now, because what are the chances of having the exact same conversation again?
Yeah, this is the easy button.
I've just always wanted a redo button.
Psh.
Is that
So
what
do you
it's
want
supposed to
that?
sound
Did I
like
convince
next?
you to get your perfect
Yeah,
comeback button?
I think you did.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because I won't likely ever have the very same conversation.
Yeah.
No.
Somebody can come up and be like, hey, can you help sign me up for the licensure class? I meant to sign up for it last week. And you're just like, you should have signed up. I don't know. I'm not good at those either. I think I would pick that. I feel like the redo button, it would be really nice to redo something or just always be able to just be like, that didn't work out so well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Is it like a
comeback button would be hilarious.
is it like a rewind?
Probably.
Okay. Well,
That's the way I
maybe-
thought about it too.
Well, then maybe I might go back to my original answer.
All right. Thanks for tuning in today for Easy Does It. I'm done listening.
Okay, so we are talking about listening today.
Yeah,
Maybe if I were a better listener, I would have better comebacks.
it could be.
It's possible.
I don't know. I feel like you gotta be witty. There's some people that just have wit.
Yeah.
Like John Knight
Yes.
is just next level insane. I just enjoy when he's present because
Yeah.
some of the stuff he says is quiet and under his breath, and only the couple of people around him hear it. And I'm like, oh man, everybody needs to hear this.
Yes.
And sometimes he'll repeat it. Sometimes he just lets it live. And then he's got another witty comment right after that. I love that dude.
Me too. Yeah. So maybe the listening has nothing to do with the wittiness.
Yeah.
That's just not something I got.
It's okay.
Okay.
That's all right.
All right. So today we are talking about listening, and it is a quiet power because you do have to be quiet, right? We've all heard the saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We should listen more than we talk. And so today, that's what we're talking about is listening. I felt like in going through this, I'll 100% come back and read my definition because I do have one. I kind of felt like this topic falls in line with a lot of the other topics that we've done because it's like this thing that happens all the time, but we take it for granted. We don't pay as much attention to it as we should. We don't know as much about it as we should. It just like happens. So it was interesting to just kind of dig into this a little bit because we do this every day.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know enough about it or enough about how to be better at it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't actually look up a definition of listening.
How dare you?
But I will say that a lot of times I think you have the cliche listening versus hearing.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't heard that, it's, I guess, essentially like you can hear people, like you hear people actually talking, but you're not listening to what they're saying. You hear the actual auditory sounds and you're like, yeah, but get to the point. Or I try to fill in the spot. I try to say it before they say it, which isn't probably good practice.
Yeah.
But I find that oftentimes this is the thing that doesn't happen in conversation. More times than not, people are waiting for you to stop speaking so they can speak. I know we've talked about that a lot in Tech Builder, Build a Plumber, in our meetings and everything. When you're with a customer, it's like I need to pick up on all of the cues that they're offering, the little nuggets along the way. Otherwise, I miss the heart of the conversation. And a lot of times there's a lot of things that are tied into the conversation that we do miss that can truly help somebody get what they're truly looking for at the end of the call. We all know that emotions are based on, our decisions are based on emotion. So if I'm not listening to those emotions, then I can't help them get what they're actually truly looking for. And so when we're looking at just normal conversations, there are emotions tied to that, but I can't assume that I know what emotions those are. And so if you truly listen, then you can extract what that is or probe into that.
Yeah, it's just listening to you talk about that. It's like there's like 900 things going on at one time. You know, when you're listening to someone or having a conversation with someone, there's the emotion piece that you're navigating. There's the content, the words being exchanged that you're navigating. There's kind of like the conditions of like the relationship, of the verbal and nonverbal cues. It's like, daggone, when we're just having a conversation, speaking and listening, there's so many things to like keep track of. It feels like, if you're really paying attention, I feel like there's a lot of things to keep track of, if that makes sense.
For sure.
Okay, here's my definition. And I liked this one because it's short and sweet, but I think this kind of goes along with what we're saying about listening. To hear something with thoughtful attention. Yes. I liked that it was, like I said, short, but that also thoughtful attention, that when we're hearing people, like you're saying, hearing and listening are not the same thing. When we're taking in what people are saying, we are giving it thoughtful attention in like 100 different ways. We're listening for the emotion that underlines what people are saying. We're listening for the words that they're actually using. We're watching the cues that their body is giving us. One of the things I wrote down was, I know we'll kind of probably get into this, but it makes sense for me to say it right now. Things you can do to be a better listener. And one of the things was hear what's underneath the words. Yeah. I liked that too. Hear what's underneath the words, what's not being said. If someone's face doesn't match what they're saying, if their tone changes, if their body language changes. But I really like that, hear what's underneath the words, because there's a lot of times when people either don't know what words to say, they're unsure of the words, or maybe the relationship is not in a place where they can say the words they really want to say.
Right.
So sometimes when we say, you know, your face is not matching what you're saying right now, it's okay for you to be transparent with me. I want you to be honest. You know, like when we can invite that in people, then maybe we can dig a little bit deeper into kind of what they're thinking or feeling. Yeah,
I was with some techs the other day, and we were just talking about how to serve our customers, how to make sure you ask the right questions, figure out what the true needs are of the person. Someone in the group, I can't remember who it was, they said, you know, am I missing something? And I thought it was really cool that they said that, because a lot of times we are. I said, but let's change that question a little bit and ask, what am I missing? Because if we say, am I missing something, there's can be some doubt there. But oftentimes in conversation, there's so many other ways you can dissect that. I can guarantee you there's something that you're missing. So what is it that I'm missing? So just because somebody says, you know, yeah, we went on vacation this weekend with our with our family again. Well, again? So this sounds like this is not the first time, but then the way that you said it, well, how did you feel about that? Well, what was that vacation like for you guys? Were you looking forward to it? It sounds like this is a regular occurrence. How often do you do that? Would you change something about it? Like, there's so many questions that go into just that one statement. And if you're really picking up on the entirety of that statement, which is very challenging to do, then there's so many other avenues you can go down. I do have some texts come up and say, Rob, I'm not great at conversation. I'm not great at that piece. And almost like the button where you have a witty response for something. Sometimes it's challenging for people just in general to have conversation, which is fine. And so they're like, give me the thing I need to say. And I'm like, it's hard to tell you exactly in every conversation what you need to say. But that underlying, the undertones that are in every conversation, if you lead your conversation with curiosity and you lead your listening skill with curiosity, you will find plenty of ways to ask questions of things. Just what did they mean by that? And do they believe what they're saying? Is what emotion, not is there emotion, what emotion is there behind what they just said? And then lean into that. Sometimes it develops some pretty awkward questions, but that comes with practice of, I probably shouldn't ask that question, or I should ask that question.
Yeah. Why do you think, before I get too far down my rabbit hole of what you could do to be a better listener, why do you think listening is hard for people?
That's a good question. I think that a lot of people are caught up in their own stuff every day in many moments of the day, and they don't give the time to slow down and be present. I would say more than not, a lot of people are not present. And it's challenging to just be where your feet are. I've heard that a lot in my life, is just be where your feet are. And I think there's great value in that. And that's how you truly build good relationships, is just being present. But I think that we put our own stuff in front of others. And that leads us to that.
Yeah.
Have you heard of David Foster Wallace?
No.
He wrote a book called This Is Water. It's really short. It was actually a commencement speech. I forget which college it is, but he went and did a commencement speech for it. And they actually turned it into a book because it was really interesting what he wrote and said to everybody. But I grabbed an excerpt from it because I feel like it ties to listening, but also just ties to awareness, which kind of goes into your question. He says this, here's just one example of the total wrongness of something I tend to be automatically sure of. Everything in my own immediate experience supports my deep belief that I am the absolute center of the universe. The realest, most vivid, and important person in existence. We rarely think about this sort of natural, basic self-centeredness because it's too socially repulsive, but it's pretty much the same for all of us. It's our default setting, hardwired into our boards at birth. And he says, think about it. There's no experience that you have in life that it's not, from my perspective is this, hey, above me, I see this, beside me, in front of me. From my perspective, this is what I see. Everything we see is through that. And so it's actually funny, if you watch the commencement speech, when he says that line, I am the center of the universe, he's absolutely sure of it. Everybody kind of laughs, and it wasn't supposed to be a funny line. There's funny stuff in it later in the speech, but it's so true. So when we think about just listening and hearing people, we're hearing it from our perspective. It's our perception. But going back to Rachel's perception versus perspective, is there what perspective are you taking in this? Is there just perspective in this versus our perception of what's actually happening? So I think if we can almost third party ourselves, you go to sleep and you wait, you're in your dream and you can watch yourself do stuff. Can we third party ourselves in that conversation and see things a little bit differently? So I think that's part of what makes people challenged to listen.
So many things I want to say. First of all, I think we could do a whole podcast on that. Like this idea that, and I like how he kind of talks about in there. It's like, it would kind of feel or seem taboo to say that I see everything through my own lens, or it's about me. But in reality, that's what we do. I mean, that's how our bodies are wired, is to self-preserve, and to look through our own lens and hear and see things through our own lens. So I think that's fascinating. So pin that for another day. But one thing you also said too reminds me in Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about how humans are, I think surely the only, or the only species that's capable of doing that, of removing ourselves. He talks about imagining yourself sitting in the room you're in right now, but you're up in the corner watching yourself. But we're the only people who are capable of doing that. And so, or species that's capable of doing that.
Yeah.
So being able to do that helps us then to better reflect on, am I acting from only my perceptions or my perspective, or am I actually engaging with the other person? I had something in my notes as well about that, and I thought this was interesting, kind of ties along. The entire paradigm of listening rests on the premise that the solutions to our conflicts lie within us. Like, if you talking to me and you have a problem, the solution to the problem lies within you. You don't need me.
Yeah.
But we're talking about it. Our goal as listeners is not to impart anything external. Let me tell you what to do.
Yep.
But to help the speaker draw the answers that are already in them.
Yeah. That's multiplier talk right there.
That's hard, but I hear that and I see that, but that is difficult. That is very difficult for me in particular, because I want to fix things. I want to advice give. I just want to fix. I think come across as helpful. We know that that's how I find value in my life, is by helping everyone. But I think that that's part of why it also is difficult for people to listen. I think, number one, that it doesn't come naturally to us to be active listeners, because of the self-preservation, self-perception piece. So we do have to work on it. But I think the other part is depending on what kind of listener you are, which I have a couple of examples here of types of listening. You're just so quick to move. I'm quick to move to advice giving or fixing. And this says that that's not my job. The fixing lies within the person I'm having the conversation with. My job is to help them find it.
Do you believe they have the tools to fix it?
Yes. A multiplier would believe that they have the tools to fix it.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you for tuning in to Easy Does It. When people come up and they bring that to the table, it is so hard not to just fix it or be like, oh, do this. I did write down the classic, all right, am I fixing or am I listening, for like the spouses out there? I've used that with Susie a couple times. I felt like a weirdo for saying it. Am I listening or am I fixing? I'm sure she's like, where did you hear that from? Don't use that crap on me. But it's true. People bring you stuff. They more than likely have some type of solution, and they're probably just bringing it to just say it, venting, whatever. We are a social creature. We do like to socialize with people and bring our things to share that load with somebody. And sometimes it's just like, I just want to tell you how crappy I got it right now. And it's like, cool. But you hear problems and it's like, oh, I want to fix it. But if they have ways of fixing it if they had to. It's just drawing that out of them and figuring out what solutions are at the table. I don't know how many times I've got advice from people. I'm like, oh, that's good. And I go try it and it was garbage. And I'm like, and automatically you're like, I can't believe you told me that. That was trash. I'm like, well, it worked for me. A perfect example for those people out there that have got a baby on the way. I'm specifically speaking to the parents. It's like people come up and like, oh man, yeah, if you're carrying that high, you got a boy. Or, oh, you just wait, terrible twos. How many people out there, I don't know which camera I'm looking at, I'm right here. How many of you guys out there have had people give you advice that, oh, terrible twos is the worst and you're dreading it. And you go through the whole twos and then you got the people that are like, oh, my child is 957 months. I hope you're not that person. But you go through the twos and you're like, it didn't hit and it never does. And you're like, wow, that was just, I was completely stressing out about that the whole time and it never happened. Mm-hmm. And then you have, maybe it's the terrible fours or whatever, or it just never happens.
Yep.
So many people have advice they're giving out there. And I tell people, I'm like, I'm going to give you some advice. Don't take nobody's advice. Just, you're going to figure it out on your own. Like, that's probably the best way to learn it. Nobody gives you a manual. I wish they did. It feels so weird when you leave. I think we talked about this before. It feels weird. They hand you your child as you're leaving the hospital and they're like,
figure it out.
Love y'all. Have a good time. You drive in, you open your door. I drove so slow driving home for our first child, Charlie. And then I walk in the door and we like put her down in the carrier and the house is quiet. I'm like, oh no.
What do we do now?
I have no idea. They're not even here to check to make sure we're doing it right. I have no idea what's going down.
How does this happen?
She's still alive.
Good.
We're good.
You're making it.
Yeah.
I wrote down, so I thought this was interesting to think about what is my typical listening style. So here's a couple, or maybe all of them. I don't know.
I didn't even know there was listening styles.
Yeah, well, apparently.
Hit me.
So the first one is task oriented. So maybe that's the fix it. So like if you're listening, you're like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to, that to me is like the task oriented. Okay. So definitely have some of that. I do. The next one is analytical. So like I'm analyzing everything that you're saying. I don't know it doesn't look like making a list, I don't think. Maybe it's the analyzing, like trying to get down to the deeper pieces of where is this coming from?
Why is that like this discernment from?
Oh, maybe. Like kind of digging.
Yeah.
You're trying to dig deeper. One of them is relational. So your listening style is relational. So I'm listening to make a connection. And then the other one is the critical listening style. That's when you're being judgy McJudgerson. Judgerson. That's
a good word.
Yeah. That's what sometimes, I have teenagers at my house and I'm doing my best. They're still living too. But sometimes they're teenagers and they'll say something that's judgy about other people. And I'm like, okay, Miss Judgy McJudgerson.
Sounds like the nosy one.
Last time I checked, you wasn't perfect. Anyway, so what they go on to say about these listening styles, number one is reflecting on which one do you fall into often. Because I think we all probably dabble in all of them maybe, but probably predominantly fall into a couple of categories. For me, for sure, I think it's the task-oriented. But then they go on to say, how do I need to listen right now? So these are the listening styles. No, how do I need to listen right now? So if I have teenage girls that are upset, crying about things that I think are nonsense, because that happens, they don't need me in that moment to analyze, to criticize, to do, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to. That's not what they need in that moment. They need me to be a relational listener in that moment. They need me to hear them, to understand where they're coming from, to validate their feelings, to help them they don't need me to task them at that moment. So I think figuring out what listening style you default to, but then recognizing how do I need to listen right now? And making sure that you're not entering in with any kind of like agenda. So I thought that was interesting. What kind of listener do I need to be right now? Do I just need to be the listener who's listening, or do I need to be the listener who is coming up with tasks or helping dig a little bit deeper? What type of listener would be helpful in this situation?
I have so many thoughts on that. So if we have relational listening, when we look at perception or perspective, when we're just saying, hey, I'm just listening to hear. And if I'm listening to hear, not to respond, and I'm listening truly to build a relationship with the person, would all the other ones, those would be like you're asking for advice, it sounds like. The relational listening is I am building a relationship. I'm here. I'm being empathetic. I'm hearing you. And maybe you ask questions just to understand the feelings. But then the other ones, they sound like, I'm in fix-it mode. I have to listen to be analytical or dive deeper and whatnot. Would you agree with that? Or
I think so. And I think you can have multiple types going on at one time. I think you could start off with this relationship piece and understanding where the person's coming from, and then saying, how can I help you? Kind of transitioning with that. So maybe there's a little bit of multiple listening styles going on at one time.
Sure. I do know I have to be careful because I know sometimes I'll be in conversation with people and I'm like, oh, let me help you with that.
For sure.
It's very challenging not to listen and try to figure out where that's coming from for them and how they fix it. I think people are used to, if you come in my office, you're getting asked some questions and I'm going to help you. But a lot of times I'm not going to tell you what you need to do, but I'll ask you questions to help you get to that. But I do know that I do that with Susie a lot. And she's like, I'm not asking for that. Or,
stop asking me questions.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, I'll just stop. Yes, honey. I got you, honey. But I appreciate, she's a good listener. I appreciate if I bring her things, which I don't always like to bring that burden home, or if I'm dealing with a lot. So there are days she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. I just got a lot on my mind. I used to be like, yeah, I'm fine. And she's like, now I'm just like, yeah, I just got a lot on my mind, or I'm stressed out. And she doesn't always, she knows that she doesn't need to step in to help me fix. She's just like, I'm sorry. And sometimes she'll help take stuff off my plate so that I don't have to worry about all those things. But it's nice when you just have somebody there that's truly just there to listen.
Yep.
And knowing what the other person needs, whether you're in a relationship or a work environment, knowing that other person might just bring it to you and just need you to just listen and hear. Listen, not hear.
Yep.
A little bit of both. So I like that there's different listening styles. I didn't know that. I was trying to understand, what are the skills of being a good listener. I know we've kind of dropped a few. This one I thought was kind of funny. I've said this in the past, but it's kind of awkward, but it really creates space for people. And they say that whenever someone says something to you is to pause before replying. So giving them space. Sometimes people aren't done talking. One's not study, but someone suggested one time 4 seconds.
Ooh, that's a long time.
That's a long time. It doesn't sound long until you do it, and you're like, that's a long time. I do think that 1.5 to 2 seconds is probably a little bit better. It is still kind of long, and if you're making eye contact, which can make it even weirder, but finding like what feels best for you. But 1.5 to 2 seconds is a decent amount of time if someone's going to continue to speak. But I would probably say 30 to 40% in my experience, at least, somebody keeps talking, and they pick up and they are not done with their thought. And then you keep doing it until they're done.
Yeah. Well, I think we also know that most people, the first thing they say is not the thing they really want to say.
What do you mean?
Like most people, when they're entering into a conversation, maybe not all conversations, but if you're having like a legit, not just like a, hey, how are you? Not that type of interaction, but like a real conversation. A lot of times the first thing that people talk about or say is not necessarily the thing that they really want to talk about. So like, for example, at home, let me see if I can think of a good example that doesn't involve Michael.
Leave him out of this. That poor man.
Yeah, it's maybe kind of like if I say something about like, can anyone help me put up the dishes? It's not really the dishes I want to talk about. It's like the fact that like,
I see.
Ain't nobody doing nothing.
Yeah. So. And then you can hit your witty response button for yourself. I guess I'm going to be doing this here by myself. Ain't I, for the 33rd time?
Yeah. So maybe it's not really about the dishes. It's about I want somebody to recognize that I'm doing a lot of things and to help me.
Sure.
So I think when you pause or you come from a place of curiosity, like you already said. You hear what's underneath the words. It's not about the dishes. Then you allow people then to really get to what really needs to be discussed. We talk about that in Crucial Conversations, making sure you're talking about the right topic. So if you are having a conversation with someone, are you talking about the dishes? Or are you talking about the fact that we don't appreciate what you do? Mm-hmm. Because that's different. That's a different conversation. Feeling appreciated is a much different conversation than I need help doing the dishes.
Yeah.
So I think when you pause or you come from curiosity or you listen to what's underneath the words, you give the conversation an opportunity to go to the place of the topic that really needs to be discussed.
Right.
Not the surface level effect of whatever that conversation is.
Yeah. Even in that, and in most conversations, whatever comment statement they're making, if you just ask yourself, where is this coming from? Mm-hmm. Or even ask them, hey, where is this coming from? Or what do you mean by that? How do you really feel about it? They're going to respond. It might be an awkward question or an odd question at times. So you got to find which one works best for you. But hey, where's this coming from? Mm-hmm. Or I can sense you're frustrated about this. What's going on? Yep. And just, if you speak to the emotion, people will open up so much more than just talking about the things. Fine, I'll come help you clean up the dishes. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I ain't touching that one with a 20-foot pole. I'm leaving that one where it lies. But if you get to the core of the emotion, it's, okay, I see that I've missed 3 other things today, and that's what led to this. It's not just this one moment. Mm-hmm. A lot of times things build and that emotion happens.
Yep.
So speaking to the emotion, it's the same thing for our managers and supervisors out there. If you're sitting there in a one-on-one or you're hopped on a call with the tech and you notice that they're stressed, customer's stressed, or maybe it's in that one-on-one and the technicians, like, they're struggling with something. It's not about the struggle. It's where's that coming from for that individual. Mm-hmm. I love the classic, people don't show up to work to do a bad job. I love that that's a mantra that our management team talks about often. They didn't just show up and say, I'm going to just completely jack this call up today, or I'm going to drive around with my truck a mess or whatever. That's not the goal. It comes from somewhere. So what's going on? Mm-hmm. If somebody's stressed out, not doing their norm, what's going on? And so that's a thought process, but it's truly listening to what's happening. And I think that's where we really have to get in order to be effective managers, leading teams, effective teammates, partners, is where is that coming from for this person? Because we're all emotional creatures. I don't care how logical you are. We got some really logical people around this place. Mm-hmm. But as logical as you are, even that logic comes from an emotional place.
Yep.
I love Chase Hughes. I've been stuck on his stuff for a while, and I'm going back through his 6-minute X-ray book. It's a good one if y'all want to check that out. This is the book that's not in the library. I know. Don't do it. Just don't do it. I'm just kidding. It's a good book. But he goes through where our emotions come from. And he says there are certain needs that we have as humans, and even intelligence. Intelligence is one of them. I believe it's one of the secondary needs. But intelligence comes from an emotional place. I need to be seen as intelligent. It gives me what I need emotionally. Some people need approval and acceptance. Those are 2 different things. One is being a part of a tribe. I need to feel, some people just sign up for every membership. I'm joining the YMCA because it's cool. I want to go do this. I'm part of the Mustang Club. Those of you got Harleys out there, why are you going to Sturgis? Why do you want to do that? I want to be a part of a club. I've got the stickers. I got the tattoos so you can see it. I want to be a part of the club. And then some people need acceptance or approval from other people. So then it's, I find ways to get someone to approve of me. Mm. Sometimes I might even put myself down so someone builds me back up. Mm. So there's different needs that we have. But as logical as people are, we start with the emotion. We validate with logic. Mm-hmm. So if I know that and someone's bringing a logical problem to me, there's always some type of emotion behind it. Mm-hmm. And so if I can speak to that, then I can get much deeper in conversation and truly hear what people are telling me versus just being on the surface and trying to solve the surface thing. If something's reoccurring for somebody, it comes from somewhere else. I need to speak to that in order to solve the problem. And that goes back to, what a lot of the Bible parable, like I'm just going to give you a fish versus teaching you how to fish. And we're getting to the bottom of that problem so that we can address that and then hopefully give them the tools so they can address it themselves.
Yeah. I wrote down that listening is the most powerful facilitator. This is a lot of big words coming at you right here. It's the most powerful facilitator of social connection. And we know that as humans we are emotional creatures. We seek connection. Doesn't mean we have to be super extroverted or have a ton of friends, but we need connection in some way, shape, or form. When you listen to me well, you'll elicit more authentic self-disclosure from me because I feel more connected. As a result, you'll likely reciprocate by listening to me when it's my turn to speak. So if I'm authentically listening to you, I'm going to get more reciprocation from you when I'm talking, but I'm also going to get more from you because I'm listening. That's why it's a powerful facilitator for social connection. Is we continue to deepen relationships with people when we listen to them because they give us more, which then in turn leads to more trust. It leads to a different level of connection. It leads to being able to say what you need to say without fear that it's going to be held against you or that they're going to think, oh, that was stupid or, whatever. The more we listen to people, the more they give us, which then in turn continues to build and build and build that relationship.
Yeah. I saw there was a study that they were talking about leaders as a whole. And they said that leaders were rated, what does it say? Found that leaders rated as the best listeners were also seen the most effective overall. It was rated as one of the top skills for leadership and success. Just being able to be a good listener. And I think that ties right into what you're talking about. I mean, if you want to be seen as a great partner, friend, coworker, manager, whatever, listening is a absolute crucial piece. It's not problem solving. That is important, but how can I solve the problem properly if I don't truly understand what the problem is in the first place? I do that if I first listen to what people are talking about. How can I be a good multiplier if I'm not listening to people? If I'm trying to multiply people's talents, listening isn't going to be fully auditory. Listening is paying attention to what's going on, paying attention to what people are saying and what they're doing, being observant, and going back to what we talked about earlier with just being aware of what's happening. If you're not aware and you're not where your feet are, you're not going to pick up what's happening around you all the time.
Yeah.
Sean Edwards, I love that dude. He always trying to get me to go do jujitsu with him. I'm slightly scared. He just he got another belt promotion, which was cool. Wow. He's got another stripe on his belt. I was like, dude, that's what I'm talking about, man.
That's a lot of discipline.
I'm scared. I don't let him know that. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this. But he said something. He was in one of my classes one time, and he said something really profound. To go back to awareness. He said that people seem to be in a hurry to get to the end. Like when you're talking to people, they want to hurry the conversation. I've got somewhere to be. You're in a meeting and it's like, okay, yeah, I got it. But they don't stay present in that moment. So he says people are in a hurry to get to the end. What's at the end of life? We dead. You breaking rule number 1.
Yep.
Hopefully it's not too soon, right? But he's like, people are in a hurry to get to the end. Like what? Wow. Why would you want to be in a hurry to get there? So when we think about our day to day, how can we slow things down and be present and enjoy what we have? The Bible does talk about like there is no promise of tomorrow. So if I'm always living in tomorrows all the time, I'm not living for today, and I can't be present with the people that are right in front of me. I know we were just talking beforehand on the podcast. Like, I think it's so stinking cool that we get to do this. My softball coach said the other day, we got rained out last weekend on Saturday and they moved it to Sunday. The clouds are rolling in. And then like we always pray before we get started, it was so cool, Meredith. we were praying, and I'm sitting there, and I could feel like I had my eyes closed, and the sun's kind of coming up over the building. I could feel the sunlight hit my eyeballs, and I'm like, yes. And the coach was like, we get to play today. And I'm like, dude, thank you. I said, dude, to Jesus. I said, thank you so much for, bringing the sunshine out. And it was sunny all day. It was awesome. Cool weather. It was perfect. It's like you get to do these things. You get to be in a conversation with somebody. So being present is important. Being aware. Don't be in a rush to get through the conversation. Don't be in a rush to get to the end. Because a lot of times the end, like if I get to the end, I'm like, dang, I wish I would have, like, that's all you're going to do is look back, be present in the day. So you don't have to look back and want to change things.
Yes. All of this that we're talking about reminds me of this quote, which I love. I don't know that we're talking about being loved, but I liked how this quote kind of put the two together. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable.
Who wrote that?
What? David Augsburger.
I thought you were going to say unknown.
I don't even know who that is. I guess I should have looked it up. Yeah. But I'm going to say it again because it's really good. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. And I was like, daggone.
I can get down with that.
That is so true. Being heard. And I think when people are hurrying along, trying to push through a conversation, it doesn't feel like being heard. I wrote that down too. I think this goes back to what you were talking about earlier about how we look at it through a me lens. Most things we look through a me lens. So when we say like, yeah, I got it. That's making it about you. It's not making it about the speaker. It's like, I'm in a hurry. I have to go. I hear what you're saying. Stop. Even if the speaker has more to say or what they're saying is good, it's still making it about you. They, like if somebody at work says, hey, I'm really worried about this thing we have coming up, a presentation or whatever. And if you say, you got it. I was nervous the first couple of times too, but you got it. Okay, number one, and I've done that before. So
I have too. Guilty
as charged. Number one, I just made it about me. And number two, I totally dismiss the feelings of worry.
Yeah.
You got it. Instead, maybe say something like, I get it. I've been nervous too. What's worrying you? Like coming from a place of curiosity, tapping into what they're saying about being worried and where that's coming from. So instead of just pushing aside the emotion and then saying, I'm usually nervous too, try tapping back in and listening, trying to let them have more of an opportunity to speak because then they feel heard.
Yeah.
Which is a good place to be.
You said something that I want to ask a question about. You said that when people are like, yeah, hurry up, or they kind of finish what you're saying. What do you feel like that does for the person? Not the one hearing us say, yeah, I got it. But if I say, yeah, I got it, what do you think that's doing for me by saying that?
Like if you're the one saying, yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Like, what does that do for you?
I don't know what it does for the person who's saying, yeah, I got it. I mean, maybe it makes you feel like competent, intelligent. I can do it. I'm capable. Maybe that's what the person is trying to communicate by saying, yeah, I got it. Or maybe they just truly are ready to move on. Like we all work with people here who are just, our high Ds, they move quickly, right? And so they're ready to move. I got it. Yep, let's go. I don't think we should necessarily hold that against people because that is just who they are. Some people move at a faster pace. But I think it is important if you feel like if you're the speaker and you haven't been heard, like I think we have to get better at saying, I know you got it and I know you can do it, but can we finish having this conversation? Because there's more that I feel like I need to say.
Yeah.
We, meaning me, because I would be the person in that situation who's trying to explain the crap out of something. I think we have to, once again, kind of meet each other halfway. So I don't know. I don't know what the person I don't know what they get out of it besides maybe just a feeling of like, I got this, I can do this. We don't need to keep hashing this out.
Yeah. I don't know that I know the answer either. You said, yeah, I got it. And I was just thinking about those individuals that feel that need to be like, yeah, I'm cool. Like, what is it for them that makes them want to say that? I do know, like, I've made the mistake of finishing people's sentences for sure. Thinking that I know, and I wouldn't even say 50% of the time I'm able to say what they're about to say. Sometimes I'm like, it makes me feel good. I'm like, oh, I know what you're saying. But oftentimes I'm not, and they'll say something different. I'm like, oh, I'm way off. And then they have to explain it. I think maybe it makes you feel intelligent or smart, like you said, but at the same time, what is that doing to the other person? Are they feeling seen and heard? Does the person being like, yeah, I got it. Like, do they care? Or do they care more about getting to the end? Or is it, I just got to get back to doing what I need to. And I think as a society, as a people, we are in a hurry, and no different than what David said earlier, just about being the center of the universe. It's like, almost, I don't know. It's challenging being able to just pause for a moment and say, I'm giving you the microphone, and it's my microphone.
Yeah.
I got to give it back. So I think that's a challenge that we all have to face. Is it's not about, being in conversation to see who wins the conversation. It's, I'm okay giving you the mic so that somebody else can talk for a little bit, and not being in a hurry. I don't know how many times I've seen it to where when you're patient and you allow people to be seen and heard, what benefit you get out of that, and what lessons it can teach you in life that is underlying, that you would have never seen it if you wouldn't have slowed down and just been present. Like, I always think about the movie Gladiator. I think it's at the end. Yeah, it is at the end. Number 1. I don't know how I felt about number 2. But he's walking through the wheat field, and he's got his little hands in there feeling the little tops of the wheat. Like, I think about like those simple things in life, being present, enjoying the field, enjoying what you have. That stuff is important, but it starts with people. It really starts with self, but I'm carrying myself to other people and being present in that moment and listening to what they have to say. So there are benefits in moving quickly, I will say. For my high Ds out there, I totally think that there's a benefit in moving fast, because if we move slow all the time, stuff won't get done when it needs to. Yep. And it's okay jumping into things when you don't have all the information. But equally so, the S's need to pick up the pace, and then the D's might need to slow that down, and everybody in between. Those aren't even the opposite ends of the scale, but we all need to find space for each other. There's huge benefit in that. But we have to slow down to be able to do that.
You said something about, I don't know what, competition. I wrote that down when I was watching a YouTube video. See what you got me doing now? I was watching all these YouTube videos. And she said, staying silent, nodding your head, and repeating back what the person said, that is not the only qualities of a good listener. That doesn't make you a good listener. So staying silent, nodding your head, and repeating back doesn't make you a good listener. It is about being active, non-competitive, which I thought was an interesting thing to throw in there. And then having a two-way interaction. So when I did the class on crucial conversations a couple weeks ago, and we talked about this, the way that people approach conversations. And so I started thinking about, and we talked a little bit about in the class, is like, have we been, the way that we were brought up, the way that we were raised, I'm pretty sure I don't have no data or facts or anything, any experiments to back this up. But I would imagine that the way that we were brought up, the way that we were raised, heavily influences the way that we enter in conversations, unless we have done a lot of work on that ourselves to do it differently. So I'll give you this example. If when you were growing up, if the way that you entered in most conversations, let's just say with your parents, was to have to be defensive, right? To have to explain yourself, to have to defend your side, then my guess is that unless you really work on that, you take that approach or that response code into the rest of your life. So if you feel like you've constantly kind of had to be on the defensive, then I think when you're listening to people, you're listening in one of those ways we talked about. You're feeling like you have to defend. So when you're listening to someone, you're immediately trying to think of what your response is going to be to what they say. So I'm interested to hear what you think about that. Like, do you feel like the way that we've had to enter into conversations our whole lives or up until we were adults and knew any better, do you think that impacts how we navigate those things later in life?
Yeah. I think that that's the primary way that people figure out how to navigate all things, not just listening, how we interact with people, what's our norms, what we believe, what's important to us, I think has a big piece to do with our experiences at a young age. You've heard the classic nature versus nurture. I do think it's both. I often talk about the twins, like you're born twins. If you are a twin, know a twin, you know that the twins, while they might look very, very similar and act very similar, are not the same. They have nuances that are different. Some twins look very close to the same, but are completely different. And so the way that our brains were formed, the way God made us, it's like, this is what I'm giving you. These are the tools I'm giving you. This is your card or your cards. Take these cards, go forth, do amazing things. But everybody gets a different set. So I think there's the nature side of how we were born, but then the rest, I think, is our experiences and how we interact with the environment. The norms in your family at a young age are typically carried into your own adulthood. We were just talking about, in the management team, we were just talking about general, like you're driving your car down the road, like how do you drive? Or what does clean look like to you? Like Meredith, if I said, what does your house look like right now? What is the norm, the average of clean for you? That might not look the norm for me or someone else. I know Shallon's very clean. She likes things to be a certain way. Don't you go in her office and move nothing around. Brandon's the same way. I remember we used to go in there and we would he used to have stuff on his desk and you just slide it as you're talking to him. You're like talking to somebody and you're just sitting at their desk and then you're just kind of like fiddle with stuff on their desk. And then I would just move something and he'd be in conversations like, and he'd do his thing and he'd reach up and he'd move it back. So some people are much more regimented in certain ways. And then he talks about his kids. His son is more similar to how he is. So all them questions that we talked about in life, that he likes to ask you a bunch of questions, Cash asked him a bunch of questions. And so he's getting a taste of his own medicine from now later in life. So I would say that Cash was born like that, but also he's been nurtured like that. But then his daughter is more similar to his wife, Jamie. And so it's just interesting. And it's not always a boy-girl thing that the son follows after. It could be the other way. Yeah. So I do think that we carry those behaviors in life. But you said something that was important, I think, is that what work have we done on that? Because we can adjust and change those things and make us better listeners if we choose to, as many things. You want to be an archer in life, you can do that. But some people might be born with skills that lend them to be really good at it, but you could still learn it and make adjustments. So I do think that that's the case.
Yep. Back to self-awareness.
That's right.
Surprise.
I did have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
This popped up when I was doing research and it says, what is the difference between being silent and being a good listener?
So I'll go back to one of the things that I read. I think silent is just a state of being. I mean, we could all sit here in this room and be silent. Like just not talking, the absence of noise or sound. I think listening, what was the second part?
What's the difference between being silent and being a good listener?
A good listener. I think a good listener, this is another thing is she called it being a trampoline listener. What? What does that mean? So not a sponge. So a sponge is just sitting there absorbing.
What?
I'm not doing it again.
I don't think I heard it well.
Corey can insert some sponge noise there. So a sponge would be just sitting there taking it all in. Maybe that's silent. Maybe the sponge is silent.
Okay.
Okay. We're going somewhere here. A trampoline listener, listen to this. It gives the speaker's words height. Think about a trampoline. Height, amplification, energy, and acceleration. What?
I knew you were going to say what.
That's crazy. So I think maybe a good listener is someone who is doing a few things. I think we've already touched on a few things, which I guess this is probably a good segue into what can you do to be a better listener. But I think you're coming from a place of curiosity. You're asking questions. I think that's one thing you can do as a good listener. Someone who's just being silent, I don't think is asking good questions or thinking about what questions can I ask that would help this person navigate whatever it is we're talking about. So I think you can go with curiosity. Going back to the trampoline listening, I think when you listen to the speaker's words and you're giving them height, amplification, energy, and acceleration, all of those words to me mean you're hearing the words and you're tapping into the words. So like you're giving their words energy. I know a lot of times we mirror back, like, hey, you said blah, blah, blah. Tell me more about that. Like, to me, that's amplifying that person's word. That's giving the words energy. So I loved that, I guess, kind of that symbolism there of the trampoline and how we don't just sit there and take in all the words. We take the words and we give them energy. We amplify them. We heighten them. I just loved that. So I think maybe that's the difference for me. Sponge, silent.
What did it sound like?
I don't know. I don't even know what I did.
Yeah. So I tell you, two people, you were saying that, and two people that come to mind have actually both been on here that remind me of trampoline listeners.
Oh.
Brandon Belk.
Oh.
Love that dude. And Adrian are really, really good at that. Brandon, I remember meeting him in the CSR meeting for the first time. That fool he was acting a fool up in there. He's hilarious. And always just as a ball of energy and is exciting, positive. And then you see him in the halls, and I don't know how many times, like, I just feel better when I talk to him. He's usually one, he's like, no way. Like, what? How did you do that? Like, he's always making you feel better about yourself and being curious about what you're saying. And then even some of the cues that you do naturally already anyway, but some of the other ones that you add in is like when people say something like, really? Like just the little cues that get people to continue to talk about stuff. Like he does that so well. So I love talking to him. And then Adrian's one, I think of her, she's good at that, but then also she has those multiplier qualities where you say something, she's like, okay, so tell me about that, because you might be onto something. Like no matter like whatever in conversation, like she's gonna find something in that and gives you energy to maybe pursue that. She's not gonna do it for you. She'll ask you questions, but she helps develop those thoughts for you that you didn't know that you were onto something until somebody tells you.
Yeah.
And so those are two people that came to mind that I appreciate. It's fun being around them because you feel better walking away, and a lot of times you walk away with something that you can take action on, which is great. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, it is. I was just getting ready to say, I mean, just that, like, just that, when she's like, that in of itself, when you're the person on the receiving end, is just like, I mean, it kind of makes you sit up a little straighter.
Look what I did.
Yeah, you're like, oh my gosh, look at me.
Yeah.
I just think that those things, I wrote that down too, as something you can do to be a better listener, is to validate with a few simple words. If hers is like this, like, it's even not even a word. It's like an action, or saying really, or saying of course, or that makes sense. I think that's indicating like I'm accepting you. This is safe.
Yep.
Keep going.
Yep.
And I think it's just giving the cue that that's where we're at. I also had something in here that I thought was interesting is just because you're saying something like really or of course, it doesn't necessarily mean you are agreeing. It just means I'm hearing you.
Yep.
I think sometimes people are hesitant to interact that way and nod their head or say things like, of course, because if I don't agree with what you're saying, then you could interpret that as agreement.
Sure.
We can give people signals that we're listening and that I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm accepting what you're saying. It doesn't mean I agree with what you're saying. I will have an opportunity if I need to say what my perspective and what my side is, but it is okay to give you the indications of I'm hearing you, I'm listening to, even if I don't agree with you.
Yeah, I think the right or that makes sense. Those comments are showing that how I'm envisioning it from your perspective, that makes sense. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
The rights. Those will get people to continue to talk that I see you. There was a tip that says, stay calm if someone expresses a particular strong emotion or an opinion on something. I don't want to. I want to approach it from a neutral standpoint. I don't want to be judgy. What did you say? Or judgy?
Judgy McJudgerson.
Judgy McJudgerson. I don't want to do that. But if I can just hear where they're coming from, I might be able to pick up on something that I may have missed originally. You're not going to agree with everybody on all things, and that's perfectly fine, but I can still see them. I did want to offer one final thought today. I came across something in my travels when we were looking at listening, and it was a lady named Judith Glaser, Glaser. I don't know, Glaser. Glaser sounds cool.
Yep.
She I think created something called CIQ, which is conversational intelligence. I know we talked about EQ recently. I don't know how many more EQ, IQ. I don't know how many more we can handle, y'all. But she says this is a conversational tool. So she says it's a powerful framework developed by her, blending neuroscience, big word, communication theory, and leadership science. Basically, what it is she breaks down the intelligence of like how to have good conversations, things to do, things not to do, and that if you practice some of these tools, you're better in conversation. But a lot of it ties back to listening. She said there are 3 levels of conversation, almost like what you were talking about earlier, different forms of listening. I didn't know there's different kinds. So she says there's telling. So level 1 is telling. This is informing and directing. How does this impact our conversation? Low trust. Level 2, debating. This is I'm persuading or defending my case, and you're doing the same. This has moderate trust. We do know that relationships can build if there's a debate. In fact, you can have strong relationships with people if you debate with them, but you got to do it in the right way. And then 3 is sharing. She says it's co-creating, listening to connect. The impact is it leads to high trust and innovation. And so if we live in these different levels day to day, we do live in these levels day to day. Where do we find ourselves most often? Am I debating with people? Am I telling people? Or am I trying to truly connect with people? I think we all fall in different areas at different times of the day or different times in our life. And so she says aim for obviously for level 3 conversations to unlock collective intelligence, which goes back to multipliers. If you all haven't listened to those, watch those, you need to. But this is some easy ways to do it. I love some of the tips that she gives. She says she teaches people the goal is to shift listening to connect with curiosity, empathy, and openness. I love this one. We were talking about this before we got started. She has a strategy called double clicking, which I thought was so cool. She says when someone says something that's interesting, if you're truly being curious, she encourages you to dive into that. So she'll say, what's underneath that feeling? Or what did you mean by that? Like, what do you mean?
Click.
Yeah, you're double clicking on the statement. We all do that when we want to expand something out or learn something more. So she offers to double click on people's statements because there's a lot of times something deeper than that. And she says, which we've already talked about, she says, replace I already know with curiosity. So I might not understand where somebody's coming from. I might think I know, but oftentimes, at least in my experience, I found that I didn't fully think about it like that. And I think that just makes you better and smarter when you can learn where people are coming from. You learn more about the person and life in general. So CIQ. I thought that was really interesting.
Double click. I love that. I loved the fact that she used the word co-creating.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Like when you're in a conversation and you're listening and the other person's listening and you're asking questions and they're asking questions, like you're co-creating like this meaning and this relationship. And this is just, I love that word, co-creating together.
That's a good one.
Go, Miss Glazer, or whatever your name is.
Judy, I see you.
Go, Judith. Okay, so maybe I'll start the rapid fire recap.
Yo.
Dun, dun, dun.
Let's go. I'm signed off.
Okay, so I think we have probably made the case for how important listening can be. I do have on here that it underpins all aspects of communication. Boom. So we all have to be better at it. We have to get better at it. It's living with us every day, all the time, and we take it for granted. So what are some ways you can work on it? Number one, pause. Give the pause and let people finish talking. Come from a place of curiosity. Ask questions. Double click. When you hear something that needs to be explored further, explore it further. Ask a question. Hear what's underneath the words. Watch people's facial cues, their body cues, the tone that they're using. If it doesn't match, then say that. And try and dig in a little bit deeper. We know when we are listening to people, then we're creating a deeper connection with them as well. Be a trampoline listener.
I love that.
Me too. Give the person's words energy, height, amplification, and acceleration like you would get if you were on a trampoline. Okay, I'm pretty sure I missed some stuff.
You did a good job.
Thanks.
Don't
be a sponge.
Yeah.
Be a trampoline. Don't be a sponge.
Yeah. Originally, when you said trampoline, I was thinking bounce stuff back to people, but I like those things much better.
Giving.
Yeah. You did a good job.
Thanks.
Look at you.
Maybe I'll give it back to you. And co-create.
Yeah, your favorite word of the day.
I do like that word.
Yeah.
Co-create. Spend time. I think everything comes back to being aware. What type of listener are you normally? How are you spending your time listening at level 1, level 2, level 3? I think there's always some reflection and self-awareness pieces that go on behind anything that we talk about.
Absolutely.
All right. I hope that we gave some people some tools today.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, don't forget to follow us on Apple or Spotify. And now subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. We will be back with you again in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Until we see you again, peace, love, and easy does it.
Hey, appreciate y'all.